In spite of winning 2 national titles, Woody Hayes entered the 1968 season under fire from both fans and media alike. With his career in the balance, Woody responded with a season that would usher in a decade of unprecedented Buckeye dominance. But from his most glorious heights, Hayes would suffer a crushing fall from grace, only to be reborn in the twilight of his days. Join us now for part 2 of our special look at an American football legend, Woody Hayes.
At the start of the 1968 season, even the most ardent Ohio State fan could not have predicted the historic campaign that was about to unfold. Less than 1 year before, the Buckeyes looked like a program on the brink of collapse, their legendary coach a relic of days gone by.
In 1967, they were hanging Woody in effigy at the corner of 15th and High.
I'm not so sure I really recognized the pressure that Woody was under, but I knew that he had to win more football games or they were going to get rid of him.
Woody's trouble stemmed from the school's decision to decline the Buckeyes' 1961 Rose Bowl bid. The ensuing fallout fell mostly on recruiting, forcing Hayes to adjust his 1967 enlistment strategy.
That was the first year that Woody went out of state, and he got some pretty good football players.
You could go across the line through the backfield, offense and defense, and there were All-Ohioans, high school All-Americans at almost every position.
The class became known as the Super Sophomores, and their inaugural campaign would end in perfection, a 10-0 record and the consensus national championship. The season saved Woody's job and opened the door to a new era in Ohio State football.
I really believe that the 1968 season was kind of the beginning of maybe the new modern era in all of Ohio State football, the first Big Ten title in 7 years. Woody Hayes really had his greatest success at Ohio State from that point forward.
This 10-year stretch saw Woody's Buckeyes claim a piece of 9 Big Ten titles while playing in 6 Rose Bowls. It was also the time of the 10-year war, a high-stakes showdown against the team Hayes derisively referred to as the School Up North.
Woody would always say just bad things about Michigan and wouldn't even say the name Michigan.
I've heard the stories of him having to go into the state of Michigan with someone. They're driving back towards Ohio and their gas tank is nearly empty, and he doesn't want to buy gas in the state of Michigan because he doesn't want to support their tax system.
I remember one year at Michigan, a practice during the week, Woody had police on the top of Lincoln and Memorial Towers during that week because he had told us that Bo was watching our plays, and he truly believed it.
Everything that week was just at a different level. You know, the intensity, the practices, the tension from the players to the coaches, everyone involved. And that came from Coach Hayes.
After the game was over, one of the press people asked Woody Hayes, you know, Coach, you're ahead 48-14. Why did you go for 2? And he says, by God, because we couldn't go for 3.
He had an obsession with Michigan. You know, you got to beat Michigan.
He'd tell me, you start to work on Michigan right now, you work on Michigan today, you work on Michigan next week.
Woody's maize and blue fixation was grounded in a simple reality. To coach in Columbus, you had to beat the team from Ann Arbor.
He knew that the Michigan game was the game. If you lost that football game, that was a losing season. Even if you were 9-1, that was a losing season.
When Hayes came to Ohio State in 1951, Ohio State had won only 12 of the previous 47 games against Michigan. Hayes was 16-11-1 against the Wolverines, and during the 24-year period from 1952 through 1975, Michigan won only 7 of those 24 games.
The legendary rivalry reached its zenith when Michigan, looking to regain the upper hand, hired one of Woody's dearest disciples.
Woody and Bo were great friends. Now, that's like you asking your best friend, and he's going to go up and coach against you. Now, you know you can't let him beat you.
In Bo's first year at Michigan, 1969, Michigan pulled off one of the greatest upsets of all time, defeating Woody Hayes' 1969 team 24-12. Ohio State at that time was riding a 22-game winning streak, the longest in all of Ohio State football, and that set the stage for the next 9 years.
In coaching, I was probably Woody's closest friend. And, but during the 10-year war that we competed, we never talked. I never called him on the phone, he never called me.
When Woody had his heart attack, He woke up in University Hospital, and Woody always said, I thought I was looking at an angel. He said, I saw Bo Schembechler. There was Bo sitting at the end of his bed. They loved one another. They had great respect for one another. But on the football field, you threw all that aside.
By the mid-1970s, the Ohio State Buckeyes were seen as the quintessential college football powerhouse. That success and the platform it provided imbued Woody Hayes with an influence far beyond his gridiron glories.
He was really becoming a national figure. He was very close friends with a lot of presidents, particularly the Republican presidents, Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford of Michigan.
His association with Nixon was very strong. Woody wanted to talk about war and politics, and Nixon wanted to talk about football all the time.
I remember one of the longest practices of the year was when Spiro Agnew resigned. You know, he was a staunch Republican, and Spiro got in all this. Oh my God, what a long day that was.
Eager to engage, Woody took a deep interest in the issues of the day.
It was the hippie movement. Drugs were on campus. Free love was on campus. Political unrest was on campus.
There were protests every day. They had to close the school at Ohio State, and he would go out to the Oval, and he would speak to the kids.
He wanted to talk to them and tell them what he felt, because, you know, he had some deep thoughts, and he expressed himself very well to young people.
Woody understood it better than most people give him credit, because he went to Vietnam every year. And he went around and he saw a lot of our soldiers, and he didn't put it on an expense account. He put it on his own nickel, and he called those parents and said, I saw your son, and he's fighting for our country.
He was a principled man. Don't be the bus driver that wants to go faster than 55 miles an hour, because he'd be up there sitting next to you saying, why are you driving so fast? Don't you know the Arabs have an embargo against us? Don't you know you're wasting gasoline? You're hurting America.
He was a fierce patriot, and he instilled that sense of value. I mean, it's great to honor country.
He would walk to work because he thought that he was hurting the country by buying oil. He wouldn't take a raise because it led to inflation.
Probably Hayes may have thought he was fighting a little bit of an uphill battle. He was very conservative at times, and that certainly was in conflict with a lot of the more liberal views that were being shown out and demonstrated on the campuses.
No one was conservative at that point in time. Everybody was wearing all kind of colorful outfits and plaids and bell bottoms and stacked heels and all kind of things.
Woody rolled with a punch and was able to live with it. He didn't like it, everything that he saw, but he was able to live with it.
What Hayes couldn't handle was defeat, and his tireless work habits became the key to his success.
He always told us, I am not the best coach, but I will not get outworked.
Some nights I'll wake up and hear that projector going and get up and walk. His door's always open, never closes his door to his hotel room, and he's sat there, fall asleep watching film.
He wasn't the smartest coach. He'd be the first one to admit that. He wasn't one that was going to create all these different formations and plays and everything. He won football games.
That's why he works darn hard at it. He figured that he always took the assumption that all the football coaches he was going against were better football coaches than he was.
Woody's greatest asset was his ability to be a discipline on the field and off the field. He disciplined his players, and they respected his discipline.
When Woody walked in, people got quiet, they sat up straight, and he commanded that respect and got that respect.
There was only one way to do anything, and that was Woody's way. And Woody's way wasn't fancy.
That's Ohio State football. We're not one for outsmarting people. I mean, that's not what Ohio State's all about. Nothing fancy, not caviar, just good, solid meat and potatoes football. That's what I learned from him, and that's what Ohio State should always be.
And there was a lot of criticism then of Woody for that 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But he was winning ball games, and he was winning them within the rules, and that's the bottom line.
But for those closest to him, Woody's wins often came at a cost.
But Woody wasn't the easiest man in the world to get along with, and I think it's very, very difficult for the wife of any coach who is dedicated to his profession. I think one of Woody's biggest disappointments was not being home and helping Ann raise their son, Steve.
Steve felt that he probably didn't have a father for a lot of those years because Woody was so committed to the kids of the football team.
Annie, I don't think was a casualty. She loved the fact that he was in his domain and he was happy. But it was different because he really was married to Ohio State football.
I remember being at a luncheon where she spoke here in Columbus one day, and somebody said to Ann, with all the traveling that Woody does, with all the time he spends looking at films, with all the time he spends with players, recruiting, with his trips to Vietnam, have you ever thought about divorce? And Ann thought about it for a moment and got a little grin on her face, and she said, divorce? No, never, never. Murder, but never divorce.
By 1978, Woody Hayes had become a living legend, an in-state icon with national notoriety. But as the sun began to set on the twilight of his career, Woody's grasp of control was beginning to slip.
In the last couple of years, I felt like he was starting to lose some control over the athlete.
He suddenly realized, and didn't want to face it, that he didn't relate to the kids like he thought he was doing.
You could see Woody slipping. I could see it very easily when I was out of coaching, watching the film, coming to the games. He was having difficulty winning the big game, and that was really getting to him.
Since their '68 title run, a top-ranked Buckeye team found itself on the wrong end of 5 late-season battles with national championship implications. But worse than big game losses were a growing string of well-publicized incidents that landed Hayes in continuous hot water.
He would punch a photographer, or he'd throw a camera, where he would do something that would get played up in the national press.
Woody Hayes' temper tantrums probably became a little bit more pronounced during his last years in the 1970s. They seemed to be more frequent. They seemed to be much more intense, tearing up the yard markers up at Michigan in the 1971 game there, and of course a lot of the run-ins with the press during the 1970s.
He was so focused and bent on winning that sometimes he overlooked some things that probably weren't the right protocol for how to act in a situation.
We saw the outbursts on the field every day in practice. So something that might occur in a game like that, though it was absolutely inappropriate in that kind of a situation, I don't think it surprised us in any way, shape, or form.
A million times! Get on out. I know you get down after and he beats you. Dumb s***. That's all you are.
We used to judge the explosions on the practice field in megatons. You know, was that a 1 or a 2 or a 3? And when it got upwards around 3, you knew you better start paying attention.
You know, we all used to coach that way. We used to grab them with a face mask, you know, and shake them and hit them upside the head and get their attention, things like that. But that's, you know, that was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
There was all kind of things that you remember that he did to make football toughness. It was a tough element, and he was tough.
But the 1978 season, which included a 3rd straight loss to Michigan, had been tough on Woody, and the always combustible Hayes was reaching his boiling point.
One of the coaches on that team was George Chomp. He said, we knew he was going to blow his top somewhere, but we didn't know whether it was going to be in the locker room, whether it was going to be on the practice field, whether it was going to be during a game, just where it was going to be.
On the night of December 29th in Jacksonville, Florida, the answer and the end came swiftly. Trailing Clemson 17-15 late in the 4th quarter, the Buckeyes were mounting a game-winning drive. But when linebacker Charlie Bauman intercepted Art Schleister's 3rd down pass, Woody lost control.
When it occurred, it was one of those things where I cannot believe what I just saw. And I gotta be honest with you, I was speechless.
In front of all those people, the cameras, and you could tell he had lost it.
You know, a lot of people were laughing, a lot of people were saying, oh my God, you know, the guy's nuts, but I got sick to my stomach. And then the phone started ringing off the hook. All the Buckeyes calling. So, oh my God, you see what he did? I mean, we were sick to our stomach because we knew that was the end.
Getting on the plane, flying back to Columbus, when we landed, they had already fired Woody, and he got up in front of the plane and on the speaker system of the plane and announced to us that he would no longer be the coach at Ohio State. And, you know, it just went silent. Guys just sat there kind of stunned. And I don't think anybody got off that plane for 45 minutes to an hour.
I know that although he had a tremendous temper, that was not him.
He was just at the point where he was just exhausted. He was truly exhausted. And you know, when you don't get your sleep, you don't make right decisions. No one does.
He was a diabetic, and he wasn't getting his shots right. And sometimes he'd lose his control or his mind and didn't know exactly what he was doing. I don't want to give an excuse for Woody, but I do know that that was a lot of pressure in that game, and didn't take his shots. And as soon as he came to control what happened, he was the most sorry guy in the world.
I think he knew he'd made a mistake. He came back to Columbus, was escorted back to his home on Cardiff Road in a police car, and for several days the blinds were closed, the phone was off the hook. You couldn't get in touch with Woody by phone or in person.
3 months later, Woody emerged from his self-imposed exile and began to make amends.
Do I carry bitterness toward the organization? No, I carry bitterness toward me because we got that game, we got beaten down there when I thought we were going to win. And nobody in this world despises to lose like I do. No one in this world. It's been a failing of mine. It's gotten me into trouble more than once. But it's also taken a man with mediocre ability and made a pretty good coach out of him. And yet, the thing that makes me apologize is this. I feel very, very sorry for it because of the wonderful people it's affected.
Never once did he ever voice any doubts about Ohio State, any disloyal comments. He was one of Ohio State's biggest fans.
And it would have been very easy for him to dwell on the negative of having been fired in a situation that he might not have agreed with, but I think he understood in his heart that they had to make a decision.
More than anything else, Woody Hayes never wanted to do anything that would be harmful to the Ohio State University. He loved his university, he loved what it did for people, and he not only demonstrated that through his many speeches, he demonstrated that through his actions.
He would help out families in trouble, families in the hospital. He was always there visiting somebody and always speaking wherever he could speak.
All those speeches, you know, he would get checks and make it right out to the charity. Money to him was nothing.
If you really study him, that pay-ahead philosophy was really Coach Hayes. I mean, he did more for people that he didn't know. I mean, that's what his life was.
In his final years, Woody received 2 of his greatest honors, dotting the I in Script, Ohio, and in 1986, when he was named Winter Commencement's keynote speaker.
Because so seldom can we pay back. Because those whom you owe, your parents and those people will be gone. But you do want to pay. Emerson had something to say about that. He said you can pay back only seldom, but he said you can always pay forward, and you must pay line for line, deed for deed, and cent for cent. He said, beware of too much good accumulating in your palm, or it will fast corrupt. That was Emerson's attitude, and no one put it better than he did.
Just 4 months later, Hayes passed away, but the memory of him lives on, not in wins and losses, but in the pieces of himself he gave to others.
He planted seeds that are still in my heart.
Notwithstanding my mother, my father, Coach Hayes was the very best.
I had 2 great men in my life, my dad and Woody Hayes.
Sure, he was controversial, but from a humanitarian standpoint, there's never been a kinder, a gentler person on the face of the earth than Woody Hayes.
See, that's what they could never take away, that he was a good person. But the people that Woody knew and the people who know him know just how great a man he was.
It's an honor that I'll never forget, to be able to not just play for him, but to be around him, to have him as a friend after we were finished playing. When he passed away, it was like losing a parent.
It stays with me. I mean, it's been 30 years since we've been gone, and my exposure to Woody and Ohio State still affects my life every day.
Woody was not the only real good football coach out there and the only one that cared about his football team. He was probably just the best at it.
At his funeral, Woody Hayes was eulogized by a friend who also knew a thing or two about public success and failure, former President Richard Nixon. Quoting the poet Sophocles, Nixon said, "One must wait until the evening to see how splendid the day has been." We can all be thankful today that in the evening of his life, Woody Hayes could look back and see that the day had indeed been splendid. Any Buckeye would certainly agree. For Buckeye Classics, I'm Archie Griffin. Thanks for watching.